webinar is requirements management within Confluence and integrated with JIRA as well as Greenhopper. So thank you everyone for taking the time to attend, and I'd like to walk you through the agenda that we're going to have for you today. So first, a little bit about the company, zAgile, and then about product management challenges that folks encounter, and what you're going to see is that's typically involving some integration challenges. Then we'll talk about Atlassian products, in particular Confluence, JIRA, and Greenhopper. We'll give you an overview of the Wikidsmart platform, including PM, which stands for Product Management. So Wikidsmart PM is for the requirements management. Then we'll cover a little bit about a case study from our customer 6, who's based in Switzerland. And we'll walk you through their environment, the scenario that they were in, as well as why they chose Wikidsmart and the results of that today. Then I'll hand it over to Sanjeev for the demo. I think we can do the demo and then what's new in Wikidsmart 4.1, which is going to be going out within a couple weeks. And then Sanjeev will hand it back to me for a summary, and I'll make some suggested next steps. So let's dive right in. Just very briefly about zAgile, the company. So we were founded in 2006 and launched our first product in 2009. There you see our partners, both technology and services. I invite you to check out some nice press coverage we received from InfoWorld and SD Times. And there's a quick look at some of our customers. So right back at the top, if you look at mission, zAgile is all about integrating teams, tools, processes, and knowledge. And although we first started in the application lifecycle management arena, that is software engineering, we've actually moved over to other domains as well, like CRM, Help Desk, and we can expand beyond that as well. So what are some of the product management challenges with respect to integration? Well, first and foremost, there's a disconnect, and that disconnect is actually quite broad. It's with respect to product management between engineering, so that's development and QA, as well as other teams within the organization, sales, services, support, etc. Not to mention customers who might bring feature requests, for example, with respect to evolving the product. So what we're finding is, we're in the middle of an era where Agile is driving the development process, yet something as simple and important as requirements is disattached from the development process in a meaningful way, as well as with the rest of the organization, as well as with customers. And so what zAgile aims to do with Wikidsmart is to bring coherency and unity to this process with respect to managing features and incorporating it within the whole system. Also, status for updates for managers. They simply don't have the pulse as to where things are standing today with requirements management status, whether it's on the product management team or the engineering side, or like I said before, about other teams who are waiting to know the status of things. Then it's about cohesiveness with with software delivery. And with that, I mean traceability, whether you're talking about traceability between requirements and tests, implementation. It's just hard to trace back, where did this failure in the test link back to an original feature or requirement. It's a little bit trickier than it seems it should be sometimes. And then if you want to find information to have quick answers, there's not really great cohesiveness as far as searching and finding information quickly and easily. And then ultimately, this is all about your return on investment, your ROI. So wouldn't it be great to understand how much revenue did that feature generate, or how much revenue did that bug cost us? Well, if you're able to integrate your requirements in with your CRM side, and you have opportunities associated with specific features, now you can kind of bridge everything together. So ultimately, you can understand this feature drove this kind of revenue or responsible for this kind of cost. Now, that was kind of the background as to product management integration. A lot of times folks want to just take the most popular tools and the best tools off the shelf and try to make them work for the task at hand. In this case, of course, requirements management. So some very popular tools today are the Atlassian products, and for good reason. I list the strengths here for you for these various products that Atlassian offers. Number one, the Atlassian Enterprise Wiki. Let's face it, it's a great tool for easily creating content and to collaborate, and everyone within the organization with a proper access rights can access it. Likewise with the issue tracker, JIRA. Very powerful for managing tasks. It has a workflow built in to make it even more powerful. And then it has a plugin called Greenhopper, which is great for agile teams in building and managing their epics and stories. So, at first glance, it looks like you just look at this environment of these tools and the other Atlassian environments and other um, open source tools out there, and you can say, well, we should be able to build our requirements management solution pretty quickly and easily. However, that's where I think a lot of folks and probably a lot of the audience have realized it's not that simple because of some integration tasks. So let's jump into what that means. So first of all, it's integration between Confluence and JIRA. That can be quite challenging. And the reason behind that is, the power of Confluence and the power of a wiki is all about being unstructured. Well, it's a double-edged sword because as you see in bullet number one, you cannot attach semantics to a page. So when you're creating a page within a wiki, what does that page represent? Is it a feature? Is it a requirement? Is it a story? Well, it's only what that person who built it knows what it is and what the title says and what the content says, but there's no semantic concept behind it that there are other systems like JIRA can understand. Therefore, establishing formal links to other objects, whether it's project, stakeholder, or what have you, is hard at best, but basically impossible. And therefore, when you want to embed a task into a wiki page, yeah, you can do that, but there's no relationship captured formally. And because that relationship is not captured, you cannot access that relationship within JIRA. And so that relationship is implied, it's not declared. Therefore, it's also not possible to access other task-related information. And a wiki page cannot link to tasks or projects or anything else within JIRA. Or for that matter, because it can't link to JIRA, it can't link to Greenhopper, because of course Greenhopper is a plugin and part of JIRA. So what you have here is extremely limited ability to share information between Confluence and JIRA. That's just between Confluence and JIRA. If you want to integrate with other tools, whether it's testing management tool or CRM or help desk, you have the same problems and then it's multiplied because now you don't have a layer to search, you don't have a layer to do reporting and dashboards. You're doing importing and exporting of data amongst the different tools, and it becomes that traditional spaghetti code mess of integrations. So I've set up the background for you with respect to the problem. So now I'd like to talk with you about Wikidsmart and what it is. So it's a couple main things. First and foremost, Wikidsmart is an integration platform, and it's integrating these kinds of concepts, these domains, software engineering, also known as application lifecycle management or ALM. So that's everything to do with software engineering delivery, requirements, tasks, tests, etc. On the CRM side, concepts like accounts, contacts, opportunities, etc. And also with help desk. For Zendesk, you have organizations, tickets, etc. So the idea here is think um, of Wikidsmart as really an integration platform for concepts. Okay, so you can easily um, integrate concepts in a meaningful way with Wikidsmart. The next thing is Wikidsmart is a template-based, model-driven composite application platform. So that enables solutions to be built on top of this middleware layer of Wikidsmart to achieve things like requirements management, but it's not limited to that. You can also have test case management and customer onboarding, etc. So what we're doing is essentially turning, in this case, Confluence and JIRA into an application platform where you have a GUI layer, for example, Confluence, and you're using the JIRA workflow engine underneath. And you also have this knowledge model that we're going to talk about in a moment that's driving the solution that understands the logic of how everything is related. So here we've got that customary problem of today, silos of content and concepts. And I've separated this into three different areas. On the top, you've got the GUI. In the middle, you've got the data store where the application or tool is storing content. And then you've got the various concepts associated with these different applications and tools. Of course, with Confluence, there's not necessarily concepts and features, but certainly with these other tools and applications, you have that. And so the challenge is, how do we bring harmony and unification to all of these? Well, I'd like to introduce you to a concept called a knowledge model. Some folks think of it as a knowledge graph. Other terminology includes meta model. And the idea is what we're providing is a model to encapsulate the knowledge of a given domain. That is concepts and how they relate to one another, people and their roles, functions, methodologies, and processes. That's not to mean that we're providing processes that are overly detailed that keep you from using your own methodology. Not at all. It's rather, we talk about things like software engineering. There's not much debate over whether developers create code. Code has tests, etc. And that is, in fact, one of the example domains. So there's software engineering, there's CRM, there's help desk, and that's the knowledge model that Wikidsmart contains that drives this integration solution. So let's look at this in a few marketecture illustrations to give you an idea of what I'm talking about. So on a couple slides ago, I had the GUI on the left and the domains and the concepts, as well as the data store down below. So with this knowledge model, what we're doing is putting an intermediate layer between these tools. And now you've got the concepts and domains in a kind of an abstracted level that shows how everyone is related to one another. So in other words, when you plug in JIRA to Wikidsmart, the other tools and applications instantly recognize the projects and issues of JIRA, and they know how it's related to their own concepts and artifacts. Now, very importantly, the source of truth is always in that source applications repository. So therefore, what we can do is use this access layer to show how everything is interrelated, and we can search and we can report against that middle access layer. Let's take another look as to what's going on here. This is a little bit more detail. Here we're looking at the Wikidsmart architecture. And might look a little bit busy, but let me walk you through it. So up at the top, we've got the various domains, software engineering, CRM, and help desk. And then in that middle area, the colorful areas from left to right, we see requirements management, issue tracking, etc. Those are the various, you could say, business areas of the domains. And underneath that, you see various tools and applications associated to those areas. Farther below, under the arrows, you see the very specific detailed concepts. So this is how Wikidsmart is working. It's importing the various attributes that you see there, not all of the data, not all of the attributes, just the contextually relevant data from each of these applications and tools. It maps it to Wikidsmart Context Server, to the knowledge model within Wikidsmart Context Server, and now voila, you've got a coherent map of how everything is related. Okay, so that's the first step, is we're integrating the content amongst these different tools and applications. Now, to achieve that, there are connectors that you see in the different colors there that are residing on each application or tool that sense that data, and they extract it and they pull it into the Wikidsmart Context Server. Now, very importantly, whoops, the flip side of that is now that we can serve contextually relevant content and solutions back to those applications. So at the top there you see Wikidsmart solutions. There I list a number of them, including Wikidsmart PM, and as well as reports, dashboards, traceability, and faceted search. Those things can be accessible within each of the applications and tools as well. So again, what we're achieving here is essentially a composite application platform to have solutions driven within the environment you already have. So what does that mean at the end of the day in terms of benefits for you? Well, first and foremost, when you think about integration, most people kind of roll their eyes and they say, here comes the weeks or more likely months of effort. Not at all with WickedSmart. Uh, what you can do is simply plug in those connectors to each one of your applications, install your WickedSmart context server, and you have instant integration. Not only is it instant, that removes any kind of integration work, you also have deep interoperability amongst all these tools and applications. Secondly, you're guaranteeing consistency. So you can capture content such as requirements within structured forms. And now you have everything instantly integrated with other concepts and other systems. So you're going to see when you create a requirement in JIRA, or excuse me, create a requirement within Confluence, you'll be able to select the requirement that's residing in JIRA. You'll be able to assign an issue that's associated to JIRA, or excuse me, a task that's associated to JIRA. And so that's all done for you automatically. Now, very importantly, because of that knowledge model that I just described, now that acts as a resource to pose questions. So you can attain insightful information quickly and easily. You can go and search against that knowledge model. You can do faceted search, searching for concepts. So I'm looking for a requirement, and it's starting with these few letters, and it's for this project. Don't give me anything else. The nice thing is, when you get the search results back, you have traceability. So you see the search results, and then you see the tangentially related concepts. And then you can start clicking along and seeing and drilling down and drilling across to see how everything is related. So you have traceability inherent within this solution. And then you have reports and dashboards. So just as you do search against that meta model or that knowledge model, you can also have queries and dashboards for reports against that content. So now you always have the latest status of what's going on in your environment. Finally, this is all extensible and future-proof. So it's built on open standards, it's open source, download it and use it as you wish. And then you can create new applications in the manner that we're going to show you today, just like requirements management. So just a brief look, I'm not going to go through all of these different solutions. I just want to make you aware that they're there. We're going to be focusing on the top one today, Wikidsmart PM, requirements management within Confluence. But just be aware that we have solutions for test case management. We're also integrating your version control and continuous integration, also for integrating your CRM and Help Desk, etc. So with that, let's dive in a little bit to requirements management with Wikidsmart PM. So what we can achieve is create and manage artifacts within Confluence, and there you see them listed: features, use cases, requirements, etc. And then you can initiate a workflow process, approval and review process in JIRA from the pages, so you don't have to keep jumping back and forth. And then you can initiate the implementation tasks in JIRA from the Confluence pages. Now, very importantly, the things that you're creating, as I mentioned before, are associated with the other concepts. So stories and epics within Greenhopper are taken into account. You can have this associated with test cases. You can have those test cases managed within Confluence, or you can use some other test case management tool as well. And so therefore you can manage requirements delivery and quality via auto-generated reports and dashboards that again are querying against that knowledge model of Wikidsmart. So, let's talk about a tangible example, a case study for a customer who successfully deployed and uses Wikidsmart PM today. So SIX is the name of the company. It might just be one of the largest financial institutions in the world that maybe many of you, especially in the United States, have not been aware of. It's actually a consortium of the world's 150 largest banks, the big names. like Credit Suisse, UBS, JP Morgan Chase, Citibank, etc. And they have four main categories to their company: stock exchange, securities services, financial information, and payment services. And they had a project called SIC4, I think that's how you say it in English, uh, to manage their interbank payment systems. And that system that they had today, or still have today, and there was originally designed in the late 1980s. And they determined within the past several years that they needed to overhaul that, and it's going to be a several-year process. So they went along the path of this, essentially a software project, with this uh, set of tools involved. So Atlassian tools, Confluence, JIRA, Crucible, and Fisheye, as well as open source tools, Jenkins, Subversion, and Sonar. So Fisheye is kind of a front end to version control tools, in this case Subversion, to kind of understand what's going on there. Jenkins continuous integration, and then the other tools as well. So the challenge here was, they had all these tools already that I just had on the previous slide, and they said, well, what do we do with requirements? So they said, hey, should be simple enough. Let's build our own requirement solution. And in fact, they were able to get pretty far. Um, they built this homegrown solution, but then they realized, there were some limitations. So it ended up being costly to deploy. There was not integration with JIRA, which is one of the key things I've described here about Wikidsmart. Not accessible via the web. So ideally, in terms of deployment and access, you like to have folks be able to get to it quickly and easily. So unfortunately, that was a drawback. And they realized that the solution they had, they were starting to fall behind. And at some point, they had 30 days to try to keep the requirement solution of this project on track. So, it was around that time that they were looking around and they discovered Wikidsmart. And they realized that we had the integration down cold. And they realized that they could use our services to import existing requirements that they already had in their current system, so that there was no kind of downtime as far as moving over. They didn't have to wait, weeks or months to get up and running. We made it pretty painless for them. I think they would agree. So they were able to save time and assure quality thanks to this collaborative environment that really is coming by virtue of Confluence. And then it's all tightly integrated as I described with JIRA. So now they have traceability and formal linkages between the requirements and other concepts. And I think they also appreciate that it's ready for the future. So they weren't just thinking of, what happens today with requirements management, but what if we want to integrate in test case management or version control or continuous integration, as I described before. They have the confidence to know that that Wikidsmart can handle it. And so, this is, I'll just let you read the quote from Mr. Kundert from SIX, who is responsible for the requirements and project management. Uh, I think he clearly expresses that the project has been successful with Wikidsmart, and we continue to work with them to ensure that that continues to be a success. So thanks very much to Mr. Kundert and to SIX for being a great customer and partner really in their solution. So Sanji, what I would propose, if I can give you access, I don't know if you have access right now, if we have to boot over. Can you gain access here? I'd like to hand it over to you.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, and I can see the dashboard, so go right ahead.
Great. Thank you, Andrew. Greetings, everyone. And so what I want to show you here as part of the demo is some of the capability that is there now with Wikidsmart that SIX had decided to leverage in transitioning from their existing system to Wikidsmart for requirements engineering. So as a starting point, as Andrew had mentioned earlier, one of the key needs there was to first be able to import requirements. There was quite a bit of requirement use cases and other data, including custom attributes that they had that they wanted to be able to import within the context of Wikidsmart, within the template structure, and the Wikidsmart context server repository that we have. So all of that data needed to come into Confluence as well as within the Wikidsmart context server. And then, of course, I'll show you some of the other capabilities that that they leveraged in terms of both versioning and integration with JIRA and so on. So the first thing, then, let's start with importing. So it's actually quite a powerful feature that we introduced within Wikidsmart recently. And with 4.1, the feature will also provide ability for easy access to any application that supports REST interfaces. And also, you can write Groovy scripts to basically manipulate the data that's being imported. So let me just first start with the imports. What we've done as part of the demo is to just, if you can see some of the CSV files that we created, sample CSVs. So I'll show you a few here. Basically, there are 3 files. There's one that represents a few use cases. Now, some of the possible scenarios here, how you might achieve this, or why you might achieve this, is, for example, you may have Excel spreadsheets that contain a whole lot of test cases, for example, or a whole lot of features or backlog or requirements. You may have other tools where you're capturing some of this information and you want to export them and pull them within the context of JIRA, Confluence, and Wikidsmart for requirements engineering. While we're going to show you how it allows you to import use cases and requirements in particular, it's not really limited to this. I mean, you can import any kind of concept as long as there is support for it within the meta model itself. And so we've actually imported a number of things within Confluence, and you can also relate them to existing concepts. So for example, in one particular scenario, we imported invoices that were related to JIRA tasks as part of a billing system. And so now you could actually tie not only projects and tasks and features together, but you can also associate particular costs with them so that you can know how much the features are costing. So it's a fairly flexible and fairly powerful system. But here, just as an example, we're going to show you, some use cases and requirements that we pulled off of the web. And in this particular case, this spreadsheet here just shows you use case ID, label, summary, description, for example. We will pull this one within, into Confluence. Now here is the requirements. So here you will see a bunch of requirements with label, summary, description, status, rank, project, and requirement type. And then we have another spreadsheet which basically does a cross-mapping of use cases and requirements. So it is possible in this particular scenario for a use case to potentially relate to one or many requirements. So we also have that one, and I will show you that really quickly. So this is just basically, if you will, in a relational context, it would be something the equivalent of foreign key mapping. So you can see all the use case IDs and you can see the requirements. Now this was more or less the way the exports were done from an existing SQL Server database in the case of the 6 implementation. And in your case, if you want to do any such imports, you can, as long as the CSV exports can be done and this level of mapping can be achieved, then the import itself will be very easy. So let's get out of this now and go back and see how the imports work, and then what happens next in terms of what you can do with it. So what we have, for example, is if you go to Wikidsmart within Confluence itself that you're looking at right now, you can go to Batch CSV Importer. And the way the imports work, I also want to show you something just in terms of getting a little bit into the technical details. Whatever you're importing, you can define a mapping file, and that file will map incoming concepts, columns, if you will, column titles, to specific objects within the Wikidsmart context server. And so here, for example, is requirement, and I mean, not to get into the specifics of this, but the thing that I wanted to point out here is that you can create any number of different mapping files depending upon what you're importing and from where. So that's one of the things that gives you quite a bit of power in being able to import data into Confluence, import relational data into Confluence. And then the other thing is that, as I mentioned earlier, you can also add Groovy scripts here. So if you're going to manipulate any of this data, then you have a scripting language that allows you to do that fairly easily. And not only that, from within the scripts themselves, you can make calls to external applications. So for example, if you're pulling data, let's say that you're pulling certain requirements and they're referencing some other, objects within some other application, then you can make calls to the application if it's hosted in particular and capture more information related to that particular requirement. And we have done examples of that in our OpenStack pilot, which is a separate webinar that we had presented. So now coming back to the batch import. So let's just go through and import the use case. And I'll walk you through how this would work. So what we've done is to select a CSV from our local path. We've selected a mapper, in this case, this particular file, which I just showed you, and then the option to create pages. So what I'm doing here is I'm going to import use cases from a CSV and create Confluence pages for those particular use cases. And we will put them right here. So I've created like an anchor space for that. So you'll see demo requirements and demo use cases anchor pages. And use cases will show up right here as physical pages within Confluence, and requirements will be showing up right here, following the import. So some of the other things. So is once I select the CSV, I can actually select what space I want to actually import it into. I can select a template that I want to use. Obviously, templates are critical here because the data will be imported in a very structured way, and not only is it existing within Confluence, but it also has corresponding existence within Wikidsmart Context Server. You can specify a parent page, so which is what we're going to do here is demo use case. And then what concept are we importing? So here's the use case. Now, the minute I pick a concept, it will automatically map the fields that are within the CSV based on the titles to what's actually defined in the mapper itself. So what I'm going to also say is, by the way, the label field should be treated as a page title. So this is all we have to do in terms of the import, and it's done. Now if you come back here and you refresh, you'll see, for example, that there are pages created that are representing the use cases. So for example, you can look at it here, and this use case has just been pulled directly from the CSV. There's an ID, there's a version associated with it, and so on. So we'll come back to that in a little bit to show you some more. Let me finish the rest of the imports. So I will just go back. And now I will import the relationship between use cases and requirements. And here, of course, I will say that the tool concept is requirement, and the use case ID will be mapped to this, and requirement ID will map to the requirement ID here, and I'm done. So what I've done here is to map all of the cross links between use cases and requirements. As I said earlier, multiple use cases could relate to a requirement and vice versa in this particular scenario. And so now let's go back and import requirements. And we're also going to create pages for those requirements. So again, space, let's select demo. Within demo space itself, there are a number of templates, so we will select requirements template. We will use demo requirement parent page. And then in this case, the requirement will be the tool concept. So when I select that, you'll see here, for example, I'll choose page title to be the label, but all the other things are more or less mapped. Now, project. So in this case, one of the things I want to point out, let's take a look at the requirement again, is that there are a number of attributes here, and one of those attributes we've chosen here, just for the sake of the demo, is a JIRA project. So there happens to be a corresponding JIRA project that already exists. And so we want to map all of these requirements to that project. Now, it's possible to map them to multiple projects, but the idea here is to just show you how these relationships become formal when they're imported within Confluence and the Wikidsmart context server. So back to the import here, you'll see project is mapped to project ID. And then we're also going to map the requirement type to something that we have defined as part of various types of requirements that could be possible, like functional requirements or non-functional requirements and so on. So here we go through the import. And it's done. So now let's take a look at what comes out. So if I refresh the page, you'll see, for example, demo requirements are all created here as specific pages. Demo use cases are created here. Now, if I go to AV rendering, for instance, now you'll see a number of things, obviously. First of all, the requirement itself. A page represents a requirement. So it's not just a Confluence page, but it's actually representing a particular object, in this case, type requirement. We have pulled in some information, like summary, for instance. That's the only thing that we had in this particular sample. And then there's obviously ID and version. So, we support the concept of specific identifiers or arbitrary identifiers that you can use, and they can also be auto-generated if you have some kind of scheme that you want to apply to the template itself. And we also support versioning. So versioning is basically derived from the Confluence page version itself. And you can see that it imported the type of requirement it is, imported the rank, and it will show you what use case is associated with this particular requirement, and obviously what project it's associated with it. So for example, if I want to navigate to the project itself, it will take me to some properties view of the project or the project within JIRA, obviously. And if I want to navigate to the use case, it will take me to the properties view of the use case and the use case page right here, which was also imported as part of this. And you can see, for example, that this use case actually is related to a number of different requirements, as we had talked about one-to-many relationship here that we represented in the the file that was basically capturing all of the the foreign key relationships. So here we've automatically basically picked up requirements and use cases and additional information, additional attributes. So the idea is that there's a lot of flexibility here where you can add more attributes here. For example, you might want to add information related to the source of the requirement, or for example, stakeholders and so on. So any of those attributes can be added fairly easily as you're doing the imports if you need to pull information from other systems. And it's not necessarily tied to any particular specific schema. So now let's move forward to what's next. I mean, what happens after we've done this? We've imported use cases and requirements here. So there's a number of things that are possible. Like for example, and I'll take you to some of the other examples that are already created. So just back to this, you can, for example, create implementation tasks for this particular requirement. You can define a test case for it or multiple test cases for it. So the idea of importing existing data from another system in this case, or even if it's in an Excel spreadsheet, is that once it's here within the context of Wikidsmart, within Confluence, now you can start to relate it to other objects, other artifacts. For example, this requirement may be associated with certain design document or technical specifications, you could easily link it now to that. Now this requirement may have associated tasks, maybe an approval task or maybe an implementation tasks. So you can formally create them here, as well as establish relationships. The requirement is associated with the project, so in this case you already have that, and so on. So once it comes together within Wikidsmart, you can now start to actually tie it to all the other aspects of your software development lifecycle. So now let's take a look at some of the other capabilities that are also available as part of Wikidsmart 4.0 and 4.1. So one of the things that was also important to 6 is the idea of being able to create an exception report if a particular version of requirement was updated after the implementation task had been resolved. So here you can create these type of relationships, because what we're doing is you've already seen that when the requirements are imported, they are versioned automatically. And so the versions will be updated every time you make a change to the requirement itself. And so obviously, once that version information is captured, when you create an implementation task in JIRA, we also capture the relationship and the version at that point in time, so that we can know, like something like this, where web services and SDK requirement was updated on July 25th. Requirement version is currently 5, and then there's a task which is related to it, implementation task, which actually was resolved at version 2. So there's clearly an exception here, and so someone may need to go and take a look to see if anything changed that would affect the implementation. So there's a whole lot of other things. I mean, clearly, once you bring into Wikidsmart itself, you can create sub-requirements. You can have hierarchical relationships, as you can see here. You can capture additional attributes and types, for example, related to requirements. Same thing with use cases and other artifacts. And then you can create additional requirements. So just going back to what we had created earlier, or what we had imported earlier. Let's go to the demo space. Some of the other things that I wanted to also point out is, just to show you how our templating works. So the fact is that all of these pages used a standard requirements template that was specified to import the information from the CSV. But now you can actually extend it further. So what we had in the CSV is just some summary information and requirement ID and version. But you can now start to add description. You can add, for example, rich text and images and other things associated with, providing more detail related to that requirement. You can also extend this template and add additional fields in it, for example, like a business case or priority or dependencies and other information. So the idea here, obviously, is that the templating or the form-based templating structure of Wikidsmart allows you to extend the attributes of objects, and you can do them dynamically, which means that once they have updated the template, then all objects, all requirements in this case, will represent the same view. So this is some of the capabilities that we wanted to show you. And of course, just to kind of wrap it up, what I will also show you, for example, is that how you basically can bring stuff together. So for example, we look at an existing project, in this case, a project wiki page that has all of these features associated with it. So it's not just requirements and use cases that you're importing. You can also import features, for example, and you can link them to JIRA stories. So if we go to an example of a feature which has a completely different layout than what you saw, now you can start to associate feature with stories in Greenhopper. You can associate related documents or create a test suite for that feature. So, and then of course, you can also start to look at the more comprehensive view of this feature, because the idea of Wikidsmart, as Andrew has pointed out earlier, is to bring information together from all these different sources. So this is where what it can start to look like when it comes together. Basically, here you've got a feature, you've got related documents, so there's maybe a glossary, architecture document, design document, and so on associated with it. You've got the related stories in JIRA. There's even, for example, on the left, if there are any approval tasks associated with it, any development tasks. So each story here may correspond to multiple subtasks, which would be the implementation task for that story. So those would be could be represented here, and this is all basically real-time queries. So you're getting up-to-date information. Any test suite associated with the feature, and then of course any reported bugs. So you can start to look, capture these bugs, and if these bugs are referenced in check-ins, then you can also see whether or not there's any check-in activity, and this is captured through the fisheye connector of Wikidsmart, and then of course any test execution history and so on. So you're starting to bring all of this together now in terms of your life cycle, but a single view, information from multiple sources. In this case, fisheye, Confluence, JIRA, all of that is really coming together under a single pane of glass. So I think on that note, Andrew, I will see if I can turn it back to you.
Okay. Well, before you put yourself on mute, I'd like to request that you read through this slide for the audience for the what's new in Wikidsmart 4.1. I think you're. Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. Great. So yeah, 4.1 basically now has support for Confluence 4.3 for various versions of JIRA 5.1. As you guys know already, JIRA is basically coming out with on monthly releases or maintenance cycles. We also support, in 4.3, we now support rich templates. And basically, that means that you can basically use the rich text mode for creating templates as opposed to before where you had to just type in a lot of macros. And then I had also pointed out support for Groovy scripts, which is quite powerful because there are a number of different ways you can use that to pull information dynamically in real time from multiple tools at the same time. And then, of course, as I had mentioned earlier, support for REST-based APIs and tools. So if there are applications out there that you want to integrate that are using that have exposed REST-based APIs, and those are very, very easy to integrate with Wikidsmart now, so that you can pull information from them together under a single context server, if you will.
Okay.
So on to you, Andrew.
All right. Thanks, Sanjeev. So I'm going to summarize and then wrap up in the next couple slides. And I'd like to invite people to go ahead and type in more questions as they might arise. We only had a couple so far. So in summary, what you've seen here is a pragmatic, flexible, and powerful way to handle requirements management within Confluence and integrate with JIRA. So not only those two, but also, of course, integrated with the rest of the environment, should you choose to integrate version control and continuous integration, CRM and Help Desk, for example. So Wikidsmart can guarantee interoperability, consistency, traceability, reporting, dashboards, and faceted search for all of the content across your environment. So where do you go from here? Well, again, this is open source, so you can download it, install it, use it with your products with Confluence and JIRA and other tools and applications. The way zAgile can help, should you choose, is to engage with us. We can secure your project with annual support subscriptions and make sure that everything is running at peak performance. So with respect to services, of course, we can help fast track you. So if you want to see Wikidsmart within your environment in the fastest way possible and the best way possible with respect to best practices and tips and tricks, we can do that for you. We can even offer a proof of concept or a pilot of say 3 to 5 days to take specific things that you want to see, implement those for you, and get you up and running. And then, of course, if you'd like to extend the solution, whether it's the underlying model to handle other domains or to add other connectors for other applications and tools, we'd be happy to help you with that as well. So that about wraps it up. I don't know if I see other questions coming in. Oh, here they are. So is there a connector for IBM Rational Doors is one of the questions. So I'd like to point out, well, the short answer is no, not today. However, the underlying model accommodates that. So all we would need to do is to create a connector for doors. So this is not to say that we want to enforce whatever requirements tool or QA tool for test case management and automation. We're not trying to force those on you. The key value of Wikidsmart, of course, is to integrate all those tools and applications. So should you want a connector for rational doors, we can help you create that. You can create it yourself as well. Probably it's going to be admittedly faster if we do it for you, but that option is there. Let's see. Do you have any other comments that you wanted to add, Sanjeev?
No, I think that's yeah,
Okay,
that's
well,
good.
we're getting close to top of the hour. Again, thank you everyone for your attention. If you have questions, please feel free to email them to us at info, at zagile.com. That's ZAGILE.com. So thanks everyone for your attention, and this concludes the broadcast.